Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi guys, welcome back. We're so glad that you're here. Hopefully you caught our episode last week on ADHD. We had 2 of them, one about how to recognize ADHD and the other to help with parenting a kid with ADHD with Todd Johnson. And today I'm so excited to share this guest with you. His name is Brooks Gibbs, and he is a social psychologist, a mental health influencer, and a national speaker. He has been talking about this for over 25 years, and he is going to share with us today about how to help kids to be more resilient, how to teach them to take responsibility for how they feel, how to avoid blaming problems on others, and to control the responses, to think more clearly and solve the problem. He is educated over 3,000 schools with over 2 million kids. So I'm excited to welcome Brooks.
Thanks, Bryce. I like your podcast, and it's an honor to be on it.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here. So let's start with talking and educating parents on what is bullying.
Well, there's 3 different answers, I think. If you ask a parent, they'll say any unwanted event, any unwanted behavior, any unwanted mean behavior where we've asked the kid to stop and he won't. And then you ask an administrator and they have a completely different answer.
Yeah.
They say, well, there has to be 3 criteria according to the literature. There has to be A, an imbalance of power, not size or strength, but psychological power. Number 2, there has to be intent to do harm. And number 3, it has to be pervasive. It has to be repeated over time and your child is not able to escape it. Basically harassment. Well, that's why every administrator says bullying never happened. Because there's no possible way to measure a child's psychological power levels. It's just impossible. There's no objective test to give children to say who has more psychological power. All we are left to do is to discern who's crying harder, who's more upset. And clearly they must be the innocent victim. And the other one who's not crying as hard must be the guilty bully. And so, of course, they throw that out. There's also intent issues. The administrator asked the child who's been labeled a bully by the parent, and they say, they're calling you a bully. The kid says, I'm not a bully. And the administrator says, well, then why did you say this to her? And why did you do that to him? Because she said this to me and he did that to me. Oh, so you're a victim. So the child actually identifies as a victim. The parent calls them a bully, but they call themselves, as well as their parents call them, a victim. And they say the other child, the one that's claiming victimhood, is actually the aggressor, the bully. So that one's problematic. And the third one is pervasiveness, and so that's the only thing that we could actually measure is that every day this week, Monday through Friday, the kid walked up to my kid and said, you're a shrimp, or nobody likes you, or whatever. This is the 4th birthday party that they've not invited my child to. So it's pervasive. But then you ask someone like me, who's a social scientist, and I'll say, all of them are wrong. All of them are wrong. It's a complete ridiculous amount of pseudopsychology. Aggression is aggression, and it shows itself through 4 primary motivations. Someone is trying to bother you, they're a provocateur. Someone is trying to joke with you, they're a comedian. Someone is trying to criticize you, they're a critic. Or someone is they're hurt by you, and so they're retaliating. So I say, if you really want to talk about what is aggression, as opposed to what is bullying, what is aggression? Well, aggression is unwanted behavior that's motivated through dominance behavior, power over another, trying to bother you. That's classic sibling rivalry. Humor, joking at your expense. That's a comedian. Criticism, that's what coaches and teachers do, yet the child says, you're bullying me, teacher. No, she's trying to help you improve by pointing out your flaws. Or they're hurt by you. Someone feels victimized and they're retaliating. So it's actually easier to understand aggression from my perspective than it is from a parent's or an administrator's perspective.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great reframe to look at it at a different way. So why does bullying or this aggression happen? I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit of what their motives are, but like, why are kids or teens led to having bullying behavior?
Uh, you cannot change nature. You can try to change culture, but you'll never change nature. And the natural posture of a person is to be aggressive. And the natural process for a person is also to perceive aggression. And so let's say joking, for example. If I'm going to joke with you, Bryce, I might point something out about you. I don't like your hair. I don't like the way it kind of goes over your, it's like, what are you, a horse or something like that? You got a mane coming around your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you like horses. You look kind of like a horse. And I'm joking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, humor is very violent. It's very aggressive. It's always at someone's expense. And so if you're going to laugh and you're going to enjoy humor, you have to be able to take some level of aggression, especially if it's pointed at you.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't say joking is wrong. We would say joking is great.
Mm-hmm.
Laughing is wonderful. But joking becomes wrong when the target of the humor does not find it funny. And so we need to teach kids, hey, you need to save your jokes for kids who can handle it. You're a comedian, but the goal of a comedian is to make its audience laugh. Your audience is crying. So we shouldn't call those kids, those comedians, bullies. We should see them as budding comedians and teach them how to save their jokes for people who can enjoy it. And the same goes for the other three categories, not just joking, but when someone's trying to criticize. You want to help your friend, but the way you're saying it is so unbecoming that they perceive it as aggressive. You were saying they have something in their teeth, like this little seed or something, but they felt like you were like saying that their teeth are messed up. And so you need to learn how to criticize in a way where they feel, well, they can thank you for it. In other words, same thing with hurting. Hurting people hurt people. If I'm hurt by you and I respond to you, it'll likely be aggressive. Well, there's a way that I can communicate my hurt in a way that's not aggressive. And the final thing is dominance. That fourth, I mentioned it as first last, but the dominant, the bothering, the provocateur, that person that loves to drive another person crazy, to have the power to hurt, that's a study of leadership. And leadership is very aggressive. If you want to lead, if you want to dominate a social hierarchy, you are likely going to make enemies who want to see you fall and fail. And so there's a couple strategies to dominate. One is through the carrot and stick, where you carrot incentivize, hey, if you vote for me, I'll give you this. Mm-hmm. Or stick, if you don't vote for me or if you don't make me your friend, I'm going to make sure that other person doesn't hang out with you. That's a very primitive form of leadership. But if you want to lead effectively in a civilized manner, it's through competency and service. Be really good at what you do and help other people be really good at what they do. And you'll dominate, and you'll have the social insurance to help protect you when people try to dethrone you from your leadership structure. So the anti-bullying movement, which did not survive COVID, it is officially dead. It does not, there's no working anti-bullying expert today. And the reason is because it didn't work. It introduced ideas about aggression that were not psychologically sound. They were very myopic in their perspective. They created this dichotomy of guilty bully, innocent victim. It was not in touch with reality. It escalated hostilities, and it made schools legally liable to make mean behavior disappear. And now there are every week tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits towards school districts who, quote, failed, end quote, to protect a child from emotional pain.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems unachievable, right? I think that's what you're saying is it's not achievable to avoid that part. So how do we teach our kids about this part? So like you're breaking it down into like understanding the motives behind the behavior and also naming it something that is actually like a positive reframe. So like being a leader, that's a great quality, or being a comedian, that can be awesome. Like these are things that people can have future jobs with. So how do we teach our kids who are experiencing these behaviors to be resilient to that type of attention towards them?
I have probably 100 hours of lectures online. I've got, 300 videos in my, private vault of learning library and stuff. But I can get very complex, but I like to keep it super stupid simple. And I go back to the golden rule. There's a reason why it still exists. And it's a 3,000-year-old maxim for living, for teaching us how to not only be moral, but how to deal with people. And the golden rule is really all you need to teach your child. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And that means that I'm going to treat everyone like a friend because that's how I want to be treated. Now, some kids will say, yeah, but what about that mean person that did that mean thing? She didn't invite me to that party, or he pushed me in the hallway, or they're talking crap about me behind my back. What about, well, treat them not the way they treat you. Don't push them back in the hallway. Don't talk about them behind their back, and don't exclude them on purpose. Treat them the way you want to be treated. The onus is on you to take personal responsibility for how you respond to the person who is mean. And if you treat your enemy like a friend, they just might become your friend. And I don't want you to be friends with them, but I do want you to be friendly to them. That's your obligation. Your moral obligation is to be friendly to everyone, especially your enemies. And when you do that, your enemy has a hard time staying your enemy.
Yeah, you seem nice, and maybe it's also something they're missing. I think in my practice, I often see that kids who are aggressive towards other kids haven't always been shown kindness or been treated well. And so then they're using that tactic against other kids because it's what they've learned. So that totally makes sense.
You know, I don't put kids in categories of like bullies and victims. And I think the number one reason why we can't solve the bullying problem is the word bully or bullying. It immediately assumes that this is a bad person. No, they're a person. Sometimes they are aggressive. Sometimes they're on the tail end of an aggression, the receiving end, rather. So what the heck? This is a person, and they need to learn how to regulate their emotions, how to manage their expectations of how people must treat them. They should have zero expectations, except in the realm of objective harm to body or property. I think that is reasonable to have demands that you must not break my stuff or hurt my body. But when it comes to the four categories of aggression, which are verbal insults, nonverbal pushes and shoves, indirect aggressions like gossip and rumors, or maybe, exclusion. Those are the four categories of aggression. We don't have to have expectations for those. So any person I talk to, I look at them as a person, and I'm going to say, in this life, you will have trouble, and you need to regulate your emotions so that you're not disturbed because your demands are not being met. And you need to, no matter how people treat you, treat them like a friend. And I break it up two ways. When I go speak in front of an elementary school, I recognize, look, I got a PhD in social psychology, so I could confuse those kids in the first minute of my talk.
Yes.
Right. But I don't do that. I've been doing this for 3,000 schools, 25 years, been doing this, 2 million students. How do I teach a little kid that's a third grader that's strung out on Mountain Dew and has his, first budding pimple he's insecure about? I teach him two things. Don't get upset. Treat him like a friend. Those are the things that you can do. As a therapist, you'll appreciate this. When a kid comes to us as counselors to solve their social problems or to help them with their emotional problems, we can't go around to all the people that they interact with and enforce niceness. We can't work with every single person that engages in their life and say, can you please be sensitive around this child because they really have trauma that they haven't been able to overcome yet, and I'm working on it with them. We can't do that. The only person we can help is the person that's in front of us. And that's the person who's crying out for help. And so therefore we can only change them because that's all the person we have access to. We can't change the world around them. We can only help change them. And that's why my message is always focused on curing the child of their offendability or their victim mindset. Because once they lower their expectations, they don't set themselves up for disappointment. Once they give up the grip of their demands, they'll avoid the negative emotions like disturbance, anger, rage, vindictiveness, retaliation. I help them not get upset, and I help them come up with response techniques that will be friendly to their enemy. Don't get upset. Treat them like a friend. If I do those two things with any kid in any situation, they will systematically remove the mean people from their life legally without violence, and it'll be almost effortless because once you remove their offendability, There is literally no conflict. Conflict insists on offense. The only reason why a conflict exists is because offense is present. You remove offense, there is no conflict. So why don't we just deal with that and be done with this whole anti-bullying crap?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that is great advice. And I wanted to say, you mentioned earlier, you have tons of videos and tons of information on your website, and we'll provide that in our show notes. But it's great for parents to look at these with their kids and to start training them on how to respond to these things and to lower their ability to be offended. Because if we're not offended, there's nothing for them to grab onto to cause a conflict. So I think we should role play some of this. So maybe we start with a elementary school situation and we can kind of show how it really works. So if I'm an elementary school kid, I might say to you,
well, here, I'll set us up. So you call me an idiot. I'm going to try to get you to stop. And I always like to say this because when I don't, he gets really mad. But I learned this from school psychologist Izzy Kalman. He was my mentor, is my mentor. He's a brilliant man. He lives in Israel. He's an incredible guy. And he used these role plays for 40 years. And I'm so famous for these role plays. He gets upset when I don't mention his name. So I like to mention his name. I love Izzy. He's a great guy. And he taught me this. All right. So you're going to call me an idiot and I'm going to try to stop you. If I stop you, I win. All right. So you just be mean. You can be as mean as you want. Just don't let me stop you. Go.
Okay. You're an idiot.
I'm not an idiot. Shut your mouth.
Oh, you are the biggest idiot of our entire class.
Are you saying I'm fat too?
Yeah, you are fat and I hate your glasses.
I need, these are medical devices. I can't see without them. I'm disabled.
That's lame. You're lame.
No, you're saying I'm disabled, like lame. I can't even walk. I'm fat. I'm stupid. I'm blind and I'm lame. You have no soul.
Yeah, I think you're finally getting it. Nobody likes you.
Stop it right now.
I'm not going to stop.
Okay,
no
good
one likes
job. I tried to stop you. I couldn't. Now let's play again. This time I'm going to respond a little differently. Do the same thing. Don't let me stop you. Okay. Mm-hmm. You try to be mean. I'm going to try something different. Go.
Okay. You're an idiot.
Hey, Bryce, you're so smart. I wish I was half as smart as you are.
Yeah, but you're not. You're dumb.
I know. Do you have any advice for me?
Get smarter.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you definitely should. Yeah. Man, I made that too easy.
I stopped you.
You broke me down. You broke me down. Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting. You know, when we treat our enemies like enemies, they stay our what?
Enemies.
But when we treat our enemies like friends, they just might become our
friends.
And this is what Abraham Lincoln said. He says, do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? It's a wonderful, wonderful truth. Let me ask you, we played twice. The first time I was angry and upset. I treated you like an enemy. The second time I didn't get upset. I treated you like a friend. Which time was easier for you to be mean to me?
Oh, definitely the first time.
Why?
Because you were kind of fueling it. You gave back. It felt like we were tit and tat, like just going back and forth, and you were kind of inflammatory, right. And I was, yeah.
Yeah, the more upset I get, the more fun you have, the more fun you have, the meaner you are, the more upset I get. And it's a downward spiral. Martin Luther King said, hate creates more hate, anger, more anger, violence, more violence. And it's a descending spiral leading in destruction for all. You cannot drive out hate with more hate. Only love can do that. Mm-hmm. Now, when I was getting upset that first time, who was making me upset?
Well, I mean, it's what I was saying, but I think you were getting upset. You were making yourself upset.
That's right. That's a therapist in you because you're educated. You know, no one can make us upset. No one can make me angry. No one can hurt my feelings. It's not what you say that hurts me, but it's what I think about what you say. If I have rigid demands that you have no right to be rude to me and you're rude to me, I'm going to upset myself. But it wasn't your rudeness that upset me. It was my expectations that you have no right to be rude. It was my demands. So this is the ABC of Albert Ellis' theory of emotions. It's not A, the aggression, but it's B, the belief system that creates C, the emotional consequence. If I change my belief like I did the second time, then I protect my feelings. So let me ask you a final question. How did you feel when I was treating you like a friend the second time?
It was hard. I mean, I felt like I didn't want to be mean to you. Like I felt like you weren't giving me things to say back, but I also didn't really want to. Like I didn't feel compelled to say something cruel back.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had a crisis of conscience. On one hand, you wanted to stay mean to me because that was the game. But on the other hand, you were getting good feelings from me because I was being nice to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so reciprocity was starting to work to my advantage because my niceness was begetting niceness from you, but it was canceled out by your meanness. So you felt like you were losing the game. And that's really what Izzy Kalman taught for many decades. He says, we have to realize, even in sibling rivalry, there are two basic types of kids, one that loves to bother and another one that is easily bothered. And in there lies the toxicity. And we foolishly try to moralize with the botherer, the dominator. Will you stop being mean? Don't you know that bothers your sister? But the problem is that's their power. And when people have power over another, they do not give it up. I don't care if they're a priest or a nun. They're never going to give up power. It's human nature to hold on to whatever power you have. So what we have to do is teach the target of the aggression, in this case, the little sister or whatever. We say, hey, your brother's doing that because he loves to bother you. If you stopped being bothered and you were nice back to him, would you win or lose? She would say, I would win. And would he, the botherer, win or lose? He would lose. That's right. So why don't you play in winning mode at his game and you'll win instead of playing in losing mode at his game where you're constantly upset. So that's essentially, the approach I have been taking with helping kids get mean people to leave them alone.
Yeah, I love this. So in my practice, years before I met or became familiar with your work, I would do this thing called a power ball, and it would be that the person with the ball has the power. And then if they don't say something, then they don't pass the ball. And so if you don't respond, then you get to keep your power. And that was like effective, but this is better. This is so much better than just being
I think it's
silent.
better because oftentimes what people would translate that to is ignoring. Mm-hmm. And it is like I'm always going to get it for the rest of my life. I tried to ignore my bully and it didn't work. I never taught ignore. I didn't ignore when we demonstrated it. I engaged in conversation. Mm-hmm. When you ignore people, you're treating them like an enemy. So if you treat someone like an enemy, they're going to stay your enemy. So no, it's a violation of the golden rule. You don't like it when people ignore you. I teach engagement, not getting upset and being kind. And really, if you even go further back to before the golden rule, this is love. This is love. Love is patient and love is kind. Those are two things love is, at least in the 1 Corinthians 13 biblical poem. It's patient. It's not getting upset. It's resilient. It's long suffering. It's hanging in there. It's not getting upset. And it's kind. And I tell parents, you need to teach your child to be resilient before you teach them to be kind, because kindness demands resilient. You cannot fake kindness when you're hurt. You have to be unhurt to be kind. And so let's teach us how to not be disturbed. That way kindness comes out genuine and it has its effect.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. So what happens, we've been talking about words, right? So like, what if there's physical violence that comes into play? I think, does that change things in terms of this process of how to navigate?
It's a good question because I do draw a line from objective harm to subjective harm. Subjective harm means the hurt is subject to my thinking. In other words, it's emotional hurt because I think it's bad. But objective harm means, no, this is like an object, a stick or a stone actually hurting me. There's no thinking involved in that process. He literally hurt me when he hit me with the stick. Yet I hurt myself when I'm hurt by his words. So which one do I have control over? The subjective harm. Which one do I not have control over? The objective harm. That's why laws should be written to protect citizens from objective harm, right? Like rape, murder, assault and battery, stealing, stuff like that. But I try to teach people that most physical aggression starts with verbal aggression. I don't like you. What'd you say? I said, I don't like you. I don't like your mom. Don't you talk about my mom? Push. Get your hands off me. Punch. And so we won't have physical aggression if we don't get offended by verbal aggression. Obviously, yes, we want kids to protect themselves with self-defense if necessary. But I find that if we could help them learn to be unfazed by words, they'll never find themselves in a situation where they'll be hurt by physical assault.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so let's conclude with, what do you think is the most important thing for parents to take away from this? What do you want parents to really remember?
I like to ask parents, think about what you want for your child and then reinforce that. So if you want your child to be easily upset by words, then keep doing what you're doing and get upset every time your child complains about having their feelings hurt when someone uses mean words to them. Just keep doing what you're doing. You'll raise a fantastic, hypersensitive, emotional, volatile, victim-minded child who's a snowflake or emotional marshmallow who will have a hard time being happy in life. But if you want to raise an emotionally strong child, you have to minimize the importance of offenses. So you don't let words have power. Words don't have any power unless I give them power. And why would I give them power, especially if the person who's saying the mean words wants me to be upset by them? No, sticks and stones may break my bones, but girlfriend, words will not hurt me. There's wisdom to that old 1864 African-American slave, phrase. Now, the other thing I want you to think about is giving the problem back to your child instead of trying to solve the problem for your child. You can give them ideas on how to respond. If they're joking with you, laugh it off, honey. If they're hurt by you, apologize, honey. If they're criticizing you, thank them, honey. If they're trying to bother you, don't be bothered, honey. Give the problem back to them with an idea on how to respond, and don't enable them to be hypersensitive. Always challenge them. They are stronger than they think.
Wow, that was so impactful. I am loving all of that information. I hope that you guys enjoyed it too. Thank you, Brooks, for coming and sharing your wisdom and experience and knowledge with us. We are so thankful.
Thank you.
That was a lot to take in, and hopefully you're going to listen to this episode several times where you can pick out all the little pieces of what he said. But if you want more information, please visit his website at raisethemstrong.com. I'll include more links for you to look at in the show notes. I think the two things that I want you to take away from this are, one, we can teach our kids how to respond differently. We can teach them not to get upset to these behaviors, and we can teach them to treat people as they should be treated, which is the golden rule. We can do both of those things. And that means that we can teach our kids resilience at home and at school and in their life. And this will open them up to so much success because they're not bogged down by other kids determining, or people determining, how they're going to live their life. They are in control. If you like what we're giving you, please rate and subscribe to our show. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and also send us emails. We love all the emails with all of the requests for certain topics. Our email is accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a great day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.